This audio carries the weight of a confession. In this investigation, however, nothing is as it appears. October 12, 1980. Marlene Bramble departs her home and never returns. Her husband, Bill, spends the night patrolling the streets, finding only silence. Young Lalana concludes her mother has simply walked away. The date becomes October 13th. Authorities turn their focus toward Glen St. Hilaire. A clandestine affair with Marlene has come to light. During his interrogation, St. Hilaire provides the investigators with Marlene's private journals. Within hours, Glen St. Hilaire is a free man. Marlene's file begins to gather dust as the case goes cold. For 20 years, the truth behind her disappearance remained buried. It would take her daughter to uncover it. Lalana set out to resolve her mother's fate. She was unaware that those journals contained a secret that placed Marlene's children in the path of grave danger. Marlene's devotion to her children was absolute. The idea of her abandoning them was a physical impossibility. She would never have chosen to leave without her son and daughter. The very least I can do, as her child, is see that she gets justice. The timeline shifts back to 1980. 4-year-old Lalana resides with her parents in a house full of secrets. Marlene, Bill, and 8-year-old Donald live in the quiet town of Verona, Kentucky. Married for 9 years, the Majors presented the facade of a stable family to the outside world. The reality was far more fractured. Domestic volatility defined the household. Marlene and Bill were locked in a cycle of conflict that left their children in an unstable environment. In the summer of 1980, Bill introduces 28-year-old Glen St. Hilaire to the family. He is brought on as a handyman, a regular presence around the family home. Glen soon transitions from an employee to a close confidant of the married couple. Bill makes an unusual request. He encourages his wife to spend solitary time with St. Hilaire. As months pass, the resentment between the spouses intensifies to a breaking point. Eventually, Marlene issues an ultimatum. She will leave, and she will take the children with her. October 12th. Lalana and Donald are asleep in their beds. It is a typical Sunday night. Suddenly, Bill rouses them. He moves the children to a neighbor's house, promising a quick return and telling them not to worry. When the sun rises, their mother is gone. She left without her driver's license or her social security card. She took nothing with her. It appeared as though she had been erased from the face of the earth. October 13th, 1980. One day after the disappearance, the family friend is at the station speaking to a detective. Glen St. Hilaire explained to me that a girl by the name of Marlene Major is missing. The mom of 2 has yet to return home. No one can find her and her kids are worried. Despite St. Hilaire initiating the missing persons report, the police view him with immediate skepticism. Glen St. Hilaire would be a good suspect, and now he's coming in to report someone else's wife missing? A little bit unusual. The police actually investigated him and suspected him of having something to do with her disappearance. Seeking clarity, detectives confront the husband. Bill offers a pivotal piece of testimony to explain his side. He reveals the affair. He claims that on the night she vanished, Marlene drove off to meet the 28-year-old man. We have 2 people who are reporting the same person missing. Accusations are traded between the 2 men. The question remains, what is the true nature of her departure? Bill's narrative is consistent with domestic flight. Frequently, an unhappy spouse will take the children and leave the marriage behind. Every indication suggested she left in her vehicle. Now, however, the conflicting stories raise alarms regarding her safety. Police canvass the neighborhood for witnesses. No one admits to seeing or hearing anything unusual. We're able to search the immediate area within days of this happening and couldn't find any indication of any foul play, blood, or anything. The search of the surrounding terrain yields no physical evidence for the detectives to pursue. Authorities distributed Marlene Major's profile to various agencies to broaden the search perimeter. Her dental records were faxed to jurisdictions across the United States. Anytime there was a woman of her approximate build and approximate age who was found, I'd say they were probably faxed at least 25 different times. Glenn projected an image of a grieving husband, appearing desperate to help investigators locate his wife. He produced a piece of evidence that carried a heavy weight. It was the young woman's private journal. In those pages, Marlene had written that her children were in grave danger. Marlene had been unable to share that dark terror with her family, yet she recorded it in her diary. Not in specific detail, but enough that you know what she's talking about. Regrettably, the detectives found themselves unable to pursue any legal action based on the mother's writings. Legally, we had all kinds of problems with trying to make a case out of the vagueness in the diaries. She didn't get specific, so there wasn't a whole lot we could do with that at that time. While the words in the journal were hauntingly persuasive, they were inadmissible for a conviction, as diaries are typically categorized as hearsay in a court of law. The police were unaware that this journal would eventually become the cornerstone of the solved case. For now, the diary would sit on an evidence shelf for 2 decades, unseen by the children until Lalana reached adulthood. 2 primary suspects had been identified. Lacking physical proof, the investigation stalled, and both men were permitted to return home. Just days later, Bill took the 2 children and relocated to Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Lalana initially believed the move was a temporary arrangement until she realized the permanence of their new life. "We got told that we were going to live there now. We had no idea and were completely taken aback." It was now late October 1980. Lalana and Donald were finally given an explanation for their mother's disappearance. Their father sat them down and coldly claimed that their mother had abandoned them for a lover and that they would never see her again. "My dad had basically told us that she was a drug addict, alcoholic prostitute, who just really didn't care about us, and that she had run off with another man. Lalana stood frozen in place. The full implication of her father's statement had not yet settled in. Amidst the confusion, a single terrifying realization took hold. With their mother gone, there was no one left to protect them from him. Meanwhile, in Kentucky, the police inquiry reached a dead end. I couldn't even call the case a murder case because I had no evidence to show that she was dead. We had nothing. It's not that I gave up. I never gave up. You're always hoping something will pop up, but up to this point, things were looking pretty bleak for us. Months passed, but Lalana could not erase the memory of her mother. Though she accepted the lie of abandonment, the young girl longed for her and clung to the hope of her return. There's that fuzzy moment where you're starting to wake up and you're not quite awake, but you're not totally asleep either. And there was a lot of days that I would hit that moment and I would stop and I would listen, and I just knew that there was going to be a knock on the door and it was going to be her. The year was 1981. The family had been living in Rhode Island for 1 year. From the outside looking in, nobody had any clue what was going on inside that household. The 5-year-old girl still waited for word from her mother. Whenever she inquired about her mother's whereabouts or asked for any updates, her father would explode into a violent rage, striking her and her brother. The domestic violence grew so severe that the siblings frequently missed school to hide their bruises. I've seen him beat my brother to the point Donald could not pick himself up off the floor. You would miss school because you had bruises. But the physical abuse was only the beginning. Her father began forcing her into situations that no child should ever endure. His favorite threat was, "If you don't do what I tell you to do, if you don't do what I want you to do, I'll kill your brother." And he would turn around and tell my brother, "If you don't do what I tell you to, I'll kill your sister." So he used our feelings for each other, our love for one another, against us. Kentucky investigators hit a wall. No fresh evidence surfaces in the disappearance of Marlene. Prosecution is impossible without a body. No physical proof exists to secure a conviction. 1984 arrives. 3 years have vanished. Lalana is now 8 years old. Her mother remains missing. The file is cold, yet the truth lives in the shadows of a witness. A day like any other ends in darkness. Donald is out. Lalana is left alone with her father. And I was outside in front of the trailer, playing in the yard, and he grabbed me by the back of the hair and he threw me in the trailer and he took a gun and he shoved it in my face. And he told me that if I did not learn to keep my mouth shut, he would blow my head off. Isolation breeds terror. The child has learned that survival depends on her absolute silence. The calendar turns to 1985. Bill has remarried. A woman named Pauline is now the stepmother to the Major children. To neighbors, they look normal. Inside the household, the cycle of abuse remains unchanged. Lalana maintains her silence. She protects her brother. Then, in the quiet of a shared room, 13-year-old Donald approaches. He delivers a revelation that will shatter their reality. Donald says to her, he says, "It's over," he said. "He's not gonna hurt us anymore." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I told Pauline and she called the cops and they're gonna arrest him." My first reaction was, we're both dead. Panic sets in. With the secret out, the children wait for the storm of their father's rage. His violence was never logical. It was a sudden, unpredictable force that governed their lives. August 10th, 7 p.m. A sudden, heavy knock echoes through the house. Terror takes hold. As police swarm the property, the siblings retreat into the shadows. From the darkness, they witness the unthinkable. Their father is restrained and forced into handcuffs. And I can remember watching them put the handcuffs on him, and he turned around and he looked down that hallway at us, and I was just like, we're dead. I'm like, if they don't keep him, we're dead. Bill Major receives a sentence of only 15 years. Parole is possible. In the wake of the arrest, 9-year-old Lalana and 13-year-old Donald return to Kentucky to live with their maternal grandmother. They attempt to reclaim a normal childhood, yet a ghost haunts the edges of their new life. In this house, Marlene's name is a forbidden subject. 5 years have passed. No one is looking. Lalana carries the weight of a mother who never came home. A rare moment of solitude arrives. Lalana is alone with her grandmother. It is the moment she has waited for. She finally asks about the disappearance. We were sitting in the parking lot in front of a department store, and I said, "Well, do you know where my mother is? Have you seen her, or have you heard from her?" It was just 10 seconds of absolute silence. And she looked at me. She said, "Honey," she said, "your mother's dead." She said, "She's been dead." She said, "Your father killed her." The revelation is a physical blow. The secret is too dark to fully comprehend. Their father's narrative was a lie. He claimed she ran away because she did not love them. The grandmother's truth stands in stark contrast to years of psychological manipulation. Marlene was likely Bill's victim, but with no investigation and no evidence, she remains forgotten. Lalana realizes no one is coming to help. She must find the truth herself. I got a composition notebook. It cost me 99 cents at Walmart, and if I talked to somebody, I wrote the date, the time, and what the conversation was over. She begins her own investigation. Every scrap of paper is now a piece of the puzzle. Resources are scarce in a cold case. But for a daughter seeking justice, it is enough. 1997. The stakes escalate. Bill is released on good behavior. 12 years was the price of his freedom. Driven to find her mother and see her father condemned for life, Lalana returns to the source. She walks into the precinct and demands the cold case files. For 17 years, the records gathered dust, including a diary the daughter never knew existed. Now an adult, she is finally entitled to the truth. The investigation is open to her. She begins to read her mother's private words. "I got up early this morning and went to get Donald up for school and caught Bill with him. He tried to hide what they were doing, but I know what I saw. I told him not to touch me ever again, and if he touches Donald, I'll kill him." The revelation is paralyzing. The narrative she lived that her mother abandoned her dissolves. Marlene wasn't a runaway. She was a protector standing between her children and a predator. Within the folder, another grim detail emerges. 1981. 1 year after the disappearance. A skull was discovered on a Boone County farm, barely a mile from their former residence. 1980s, forensics were primitive. DNA extraction from bone was impossible. Without teeth for dental comparison, the remains were unidentifiable. The killer had allegedly worked the skull, extracting the teeth and discarding the lower jaw. It was a scene from a nightmare. No face, no identity. Only the crown of the skull remained, marked by a single, definitive bullet hole. Lalana heads to Kentucky to scour the earth herself. Recovering the rest of the skeleton would provide the closure the law requires. She stands at the site with a shovel and begins to dig. I was really hoping to find something, because I was like, if I could find something, if I could, that would be something more than we have now. If I could find the rest of her body. But at the same time, it was constant terror that I would find something. The earth yields nothing but dirt. Exhaustion sets in, but then a shift in the investigation occurs. Advances in laboratory technology change the trajectory of the case. A fragment of bone is now sufficient to build a genetic profile. The one thing that was holding up the prosecution and finally getting justice for her, and being able to get closure for my family, being able to lay her to rest, hinged on that DNA test. If it came back that it wasn't her, you have to start all over. Forensic results confirm the match. The skull belongs to Marlene. The missing persons file is officially reclassified as homicide. Learning 110%, she's gone. No coming back, no chance. Confirmation brings grief, but Lalana's resolve remains unbroken. There is only one path forward, a direct confrontation with her father. She dials his number, seeking the location of the remains. Just tell me what you did with her body so we can bury her and I'll leave you alone. I said, I won't force the issue, won't try to get you prosecuted. And he laughed at me, and his specific words to me were, if you think I'm gonna tell you where your mother's body is, you're crazy. So at that point I told him, I said, okay, fine, it's on. A confession is the only leverage left to secure a conviction. Her persistence draws the attention of a new investigator, Todd Kenner. Detective Kenner begins to formulate a strategy. Investigators turn to Jim Major, Bill's father. They ask him to call his son. The police would record the line. They were hunting for a confession. Basically, I asked him what we were after was to get what details he could out of him. Bill, I said, I'm calling you up. I want to know something. He said, what's that? I said, why won't you tell me where you buried Marlene? I keep getting calls from Lalana, and she wants to know where her mother is so that she can get the bones and put them in a casket and have closure. Yeah, and put me in jail for life. Christ. Bill, at least you could be decent enough to say where you dumped her. I'll tip her where the body is if you let me know. And then she's gonna bounce it right back on me again. And then I'll have them Kentucky cops coming up here to arrest me and take me back down there again. Silence followed. There was no denial. The subtext was clear. A confession meant a prison cell. You have pulled off the perfect crime, haven't you? No, I wouldn't call it perfect, because if a crime was perfect, nobody would ever know about it. In that moment, the investigators knew they had their man. That's when the cop said, "We got him. We got him." He was asked if any remorse remained for the killing. I don't have any kind of conscience about anything. To think that a son I raised could do such a thing, that no good son of a bye. I'd hang him myself if I could get my hands on him. He don't deserve to breathe the air. The skull provided the DNA. The phone call provided the motive. Authorities finally held enough evidence to charge Bill with the 1980 murder of Marlene Major. June 25th, 2001, Fairhaven, Massachusetts. Bill was taken into custody at his residence for the slaying of his wife. During the long transport back to Boone County, the silence broke. He began to recount the events from 21 years prior. The night was October 12th, 1980. A confrontation escalated in the downstairs area of their home. Marlene threatened to leave, vowing to take the children with her. She fled to her vehicle. He did not let her go alone. He would later claim the noise became unbearable. He said that she was screaming at me. I couldn't take it anymore. Then, the fatal shot. And after he shot her in the head, he would cut her head off, knock her teeth out with the butt of the gun. Allegedly, he then removed her jaw and dismembered the remains. He scattered the pieces across the state. According to his statement, the weapon went into a pond. The skull was discarded in a sinkhole. The vehicle followed, submerged in the Ohio River. I think the crime scene was probably contained to the vehicle. The physical evidence of the act likely stayed within those 4 doors. By disposing of the car, he effectively erased the scene of the murder. Days of searching yielded nothing. No gun, no car, no remains. Yet, the prosecution believed their case was airtight. The DNA match and the recorded admission to his father were deemed enough to indict. July 28, 2003. Bill Major stood trial for murder and tampering with evidence. Glenn St. Hilaire, the handyman and alleged lover, was called forward. He testified to a disturbing dynamic. Bill seemed to orchestrate the proximity. He allegedly encouraged the handyman to pursue a romantic involvement with Marlene. Lalana and Donald watched from the gallery. They took the stand to recount the childhood abuse they suffered. Lalana spoke of the threats. Silence, she was told, was the only way to stay alive. A heavy silence settled over the courtroom as the siblings shared their trauma. Deliberations were brief. In under 1 hour, the jury returned a guilty verdict. And when the verdict came back, I just almost dropped. If my brother hadn't had a hold of me, I would have collapsed. The court sentenced Bill to life without the possibility of parole. In the closing moments of the case, officials remarked on Lalana's devotion. Her singular focus had been to find the truth and hold her father accountable. The determination was etched into her expression and every word she spoke. She was merely a child when the tragedy struck, left with only fragments of a mother she barely knew. Despite the years, her love for Marlene remained unshakable. The confrontation stripped away the lies. Her mother had never abandoned them. The reality was far more chilling. She sacrificed her very existence to shield her children from the predator they were forced to call a father. I had spent so much of my life absolutely terrified of that man. And now, I don't feel anything for him. And I finally felt a sense of peace that day, that she finally could rest. As the years passed, Donald and Lalana remained united. Together, they dismantled their father's legacy of violence. The process of healing from such profound trauma was slow and agonizing. She remains a living testament. Survival is possible, even after the unthinkable occurs. Armed with a quiet resilience, she faced her internal shadows to honor the memory of the woman who saved her. Ultimately, she died to protect us. She was trying to get us away from him and to get us out of that situation. She was trying to protect her children. She died to protect us. 4-year-old Lalana woke up one morning in 1980, and her mother was simply gone. No goodbye, no explanation, just silence, and a father who told her to ask no questions. For 20 years, Lalana believed the lie. Then she became an adult, opened the case file, and discovered the devastating truth. Her mother hadn't abandoned them. She had been murdered trying to escape, trying to take her children to safety. Marlene Major had written the danger in her diary. She had warned the world in her own words, but no one listened in time. Lalana did what no one else would do. She fought alone through bureaucracy, through fear, through a childhood of trauma until a skull found in a sinkhole and a recorded phone call finally broke the case open. In under 1 hour, the jury returned guilty. When the verdict was read, Lalana's brother held her upright so she wouldn't collapse. This story teaches us something profound about the courage of survivors. Lalana was 4 years old when her world shattered. She was an adult when she rebuilt it, not for herself, but for the mother who gave everything to protect her. Ultimately, she died to protect us. Some love is so complete, it survives even death.